and the mind mirror, when nothing feels like enough. There's a strange kind of loneliness that comes with always wanting more, not the kind that announces itself loudly, not ambition or drive or hunger for success. Something quieter, a feeling that sits in your chest after you've gotten what you thought you wanted, after you've achieved something, bought something, experienced something, and then felt nothing. Or worse, felt something briefly, and then watched it fade. Many people describe it as emptiness wearing the mask of desire, a loop that never quite closes, a thirst that drinking doesn't satisfy. And what makes it particularly isolating is that from the outside, everything might look fine. You're functioning, you're capable, you're moving through your days. But inside, there's this persistent sense that something is missing, that you're missing something. That if you could just find the right thing, feel the right feeling, become the right version of yourself, then maybe the restlessness would stop. This pattern doesn't announce itself with a clear beginning. It builds slowly, often invisibly, over months or years. It starts with ordinary moments, small disappointments that don't quite register as disappointments, pleasures that fade faster than they used to, excitement that dulls before it should. You buy something you've been wanting. The anticipation feels good. The purchase feels good. And then, within hours or days, it becomes just another object in your space. You start a new relationship, a new project, a new hobby. The novelty carries you for a while. And then the shine wears off, and you're left wondering why you thought this would be different. The brain is doing something specific here, though it doesn't feel specific. It feels personal. It feels like a flaw. But what's actually happening is this. Your nervous system is recalibrating. Every experience, every new thing, every moment of pleasure or excitement, your brain measures it, adjusts to it, and then resets its baseline. This is called hedonic adaptation. It's not a disorder. It's not a weakness. It's a feature of how human beings are wired. We adapt to our circumstances. We normalize what was once new. We return to a baseline emotional state, no matter what changes around us. For most of human history, this kept us alive. It kept us searching, moving, striving. But in a world where you can access almost anything instantly, where novelty is endless and comparison is constant, this same mechanism can start to feel like a curse. Because no matter what you get, no matter what you achieve, the feeling doesn't last. And the gap between expectation and reality starts to widen. Sometimes the pattern looks like accumulation. You collect things, experiences, credentials, relationships. Not out of joy, but out of a vague sense that more will eventually equal enough. You scroll through options endlessly. You keep tabs open. You save things for later. You build wish lists and mental catalogs of what might fill the space. And occasionally you do get something. You do take action. But even in the moment of acquisition, there's a part of you already looking past it. Already thinking about the next thing. Picture this. You're lying in bed at night, phone in hand. You've been scrolling for 20 minutes without really looking at anything. Just refreshing. Just checking. You're not even sure what you're hoping to find. But stopping feels worse than continuing. This isn't greed. It's not materialism in the traditional sense. It's more like a hope that keeps relocating itself. The hope that satisfaction exists, just slightly out of reach. That the next thing will be the one that finally delivers the feeling you're chasing. Your brain is wired to anticipate rewards. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter most associated with pleasure, is actually more about anticipation than enjoyment. It spikes when you're moving towards something, not when you have it. This is why the search often feels better than the find. Why planning a trip can feel more exciting than being on it. Why imagining a future version of your life can feel more satisfying than living your current one. The emotional cost of this pattern is subtle but heavy. You start to feel divided. Part of you knows that what you have is enough. Another part insists it isn't. and you begin to lose trust in your own satisfaction. Other times, the pattern shows up as restlessness. You can't stay still, can't stay with one thing long enough to let it settle. You start books and don't finish them. You begin conversations and drift. You commit to plans and then feel trapped by them. It's not that you lack focus, it's that focus requires you to be present with what is, rather than what could be. And presence has started to feel uncomfortable. Because when you're fully present, you notice the gap. The gap between how you feel and how you think you should feel. You notice that the thing you're doing isn't delivering the feeling you expected. And instead of letting that be okay, you interpret it as evidence that you're in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing with the wrong people. So you move, you shift, you refresh. You finish watching something and immediately open another tab. You complete a task and reach for your phone before the satisfaction can even register. This can look productive. It can look like exploration or curiosity. But underneath, it often feels like escape. Your brain is scanning for threats and rewards constantly. When something stops feeling rewarding, your system interprets that as a signal to move on. In the wild, this kept us safe. If a water source dried up, we didn't sit there hoping it would refill. We moved. But when applied to your inner life, to relationships, work, identity, meaning, this same instinct can prevent you from ever going deep enough to find what you're actually looking for. Because depth requires time. It requires repetition. It requires staying even when the initial excitement fades. And that's exactly what this pattern makes difficult. Sometimes the restlessness shows up as a different kind of weight. The weight of too many options. You stand in front of a streaming service for 10 minutes, unable to choose. Not because nothing looks good, but because everything looks equally possible. And choosing one means letting go of all the others. You open a menu and feel a strange paralysis. You browse online and add things to your cart, then close the tab without buying. You think about what to do with your evening, your weekend, your life, and the options multiply faster than you can evaluate them. This is what happens when choice stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like pressure. Your brain is trying to maximize, trying to avoid regret, trying to make sure you pick the best option, the right option, the one that won't leave you wondering what you missed. But when the options are endless, maximizing becomes impossible. And instead of satisfaction, you're left with a low-grade anxiety that you're somehow getting it wrong. The emotional cost is a kind of decision fatigue that spills into everything. You stop trusting your preferences. You second-guess your choices before you've even made them. And eventually, choosing anything starts to feel like losing something. There's also a version of this that turns inward. Instead of seeking more externally, you start seeking a different version of yourself. You think, maybe the problem isn't what I have. Maybe it's who I am. So you try to optimize, improve, upgrade. You start routines, adopt systems, set goals. You read about habits and productivity and self-discipline. And for a while, it works. You feel momentum. You feel like you're becoming someone better. But then the same thing happens. The new routine becomes normal. The progress plateaus. The person you've become starts to feel as insufficient as the person you were. And the cycle repeats. You download an app to track your progress. You set a reminder. You follow through for a few days, maybe a few weeks. And then one day you forget. Or you're tired. Or it just doesn't feel as urgent. And instead of letting it go, you feel like you've failed again. This isn't about self-improvement being bad. It's about the motivation underneath it. When the drive to improve comes from a belief that you are not enough as you are, improvement becomes another form of the same search. You're not trying to grow. You're trying to escape. And no amount of growth will satisfy a need that isn't actually about growth. The emotional cost here is a kind of chronic self-rejection. You can't relax into who you are, because who you are always feels like a rough draft. You can't celebrate progress, because progress just reveals new gaps. And over time, you start to feel exhausted by your own expectations. There's another layer to this that often goes unnoticed. The way newness itself can become a kind of refuge, a way to avoid feeling what you're actually feeling. You start something new, a project, a relationship, an interest. And for a while, the novelty distracts you from everything else. It gives you something to focus on, something to look forward to. It feels like hope, like possibility. But underneath, it's often avoidance. Avoidance of boredom, of stillness, of the discomfort that arises when there's nothing new demanding your attention. You're in a conversation and you feel your mind wander, not because the conversation is bad, but because your system has learned to interpret familiarity as a signal that something more interesting must be elsewhere. You're doing something you used to enjoy, and you notice you're not really there. You're thinking about what's next, what else you could be doing, what you're missing while you're here. This pattern doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like curiosity, but over time, it creates a life where you're always moving toward something and never quite arriving. The emotional cost is a quiet disconnection from people, from experiences, from yourself. Because you can't be deeply connected to something you're always half ready to leave. Somewhere in the middle of all this, a shift begins to happen. Not always, not for everyone, but often enough to notice. You start to realize that the problem isn't that you haven't found the right thing yet. The problem is that you've been asking the wrong question. You've been asking, what do I need to feel okay? When the real question might be, why doesn't anything feel like enough? This is not a comfortable realization, because it means the solution isn't out there. It's not waiting to be discovered or purchased or achieved. It's somewhere in the way you relate to your own experience. The brain's reward system is designed to keep you moving, seeking, striving. It's not designed to make you feel complete. Completion, satisfaction, enoughness, these aren't states your nervous system naturally prioritizes. They have to be practiced, chosen, built intentionally, and that requires a different kind of effort than most people expect. Not the effort of doing more. The effort of being still. Not the effort of acquiring. The effort of noticing what you already have and letting it matter. This doesn't mean forcing gratitude or pretending to feel satisfied when you don't. It means becoming curious about the gap itself. What is it you're actually looking for? What feeling are you chasing? And where did you learn that you were supposed to feel it? There's often a conflict between the life you're living and the person you believe you are. You think of yourself as someone who appreciates things, who is present, who doesn't need much, and yet your behavior tells a different story. You're constantly seeking, constantly comparing, constantly wondering if there's something better. You see someone else's life online and feel a strange ache. Not jealousy exactly. Something more complicated. A sense that you're somehow behind, that you're missing out. That the life you're living isn't the one you're supposed to be living. This dissonance can feel like failure. But it's not a failure of character. It's a mismatch between your wiring and your environment. You're living in a world that profits from your dissatisfaction, that monetizes your attention, that constantly suggests you're one purchase, one experience, one transformation away from feeling whole. And your brain, wired for survival in a world of scarcity, interprets abundance as more opportunities to miss out on. So you feel behind. You feel like you're not doing enough, not experiencing enough, not becoming enough. Even when objectively, you have more than most people in history ever did. The emotional cost of this conflict is a quiet, persistent shame. You feel ungrateful, spoiled, broken. You think, why can't I just be happy with what I have? And that question, while understandable, misses something important. You're not broken. You're overstimulated, overexposed, overcompared, and your system is doing exactly what it's designed to do in that environment. Keep searching. There's no clean ending to this pattern. No moment where you suddenly feel satisfied and the restlessness disappears forever. But there are moments of quiet, moments where the noise settles, where you're able to be with what is without needing it to be different. Those moments don't come from getting more. They come from loosening your grip on the idea that more is what you need. They come from noticing when you're present and when you're not, when you're living and when you're just scanning for the next thing. They come from letting yourself be ordinary, letting your life be enough, even when it doesn't feel like enough. Not because you've convinced yourself to settle, but because you've realized that the feeling you're chasing, that sense of completion, of arrival, isn't actually found in any external circumstance. It's found in the small, repeated choice to stop running from where you are. You're sitting somewhere familiar, doing something ordinary, and for a moment you're not thinking about what's next. You're just there. And it's enough. Not because it's perfect, but because you've stopped asking it to be anything other than what it is. If you're someone who feels this restlessness, this quiet dissatisfaction, this sense that something is always missing, you're not alone in it, and you're not broken because of it. You're human. You're wired for survival, not satisfaction, and you're living in a world that makes that wiring feel like a flaw. But it's not. It's just information. Information about what you're seeking, what you're avoiding, and what might be possible if you stop searching long enough to notice what's already here. If this resonated with you, you're welcome to stay with the mind mirror.